Welcome back to Environmental News, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The weekly rundown of what's actually happening in zero waste, recycling, composting, and the circular economy here in the U.S. without the greenwash spin. I'm Stacy Savage, aka the Texas Trash Talker, your recycling nerd and zero waste expert of 22 years. I'm founder and CEO of Zero Waste Strategies, an environmental consulting firm based here in Austin, specializing in waste reduction for business clients. So this week, we're going to talk about a region in Virginia that finally gets serious about composting. We're also going to look at a big federal food waste bill that could reshape funding is stuck in limbo, and a zero waste mega facility proposal is raising huge questions in Minnesota. So let's get into it. For the good, we're heading to Central Virginia, where regional composting has finally arrived around Richmond. A new coordinated system is letting households and businesses send food scraps and yard waste to a shared composting operation inside of the landfill, with local media describing how it works as a practical methane reduction strategy. Now, for years, Richmond has struggled with the same barriers as many mid-sized U.S. cities. One, organics were about a third of the trash stream, but there's no robust local processing option. And two, individual pilot programs and private haulers existed, but without regional infrastructure, scaling was just slow and very expensive. This new effort changes the equation. Food scraps and yard waste are collected and processed through a controlled composting system, turning them into soil amendments instead of methane-heavy landfill trash. This program is being framed as a climate solution explicitly linked to reducing methane emissions, now recognized as a top near-term climate target for the U.S. But if we zoom out a little bit, this fits into a national push. The Federal National Strategy for Reducing Food Loss and Waste and Recycling Organics lays out 4 objectives, including increasing recycling of all organic waste and supporting policies that encourage food loss and waste prevention. Experts argue composting must anchor America's waste strategy, noting that the U.S. loses an estimated 1.7 to 2.3 billion tons of soil every year, while landfilled organics drive methane emissions. So, what Richmond is doing is not just a local feel-good project, it's a real example of a region starting to align with a federal strategy and climate science. If the good is about building the systems we need, then the bad is what happens when those systems depend on federal leadership that may not show up. For the bad, we head to Washington, D.C., where the Reduce Food Loss and Waste Act of 2025, a federal bill with real potential, has largely stalled after being introduced in the Senate as S. 835. Here's what this bill aims to do. Direct USDA and other agencies to strengthen the national effort to cut food loss and waste by 50% by 2030, echoing the national goal and strategy already released in 2024. Establish criteria and a certification program for participants in food loss and waste reduction initiatives, including support for alternative disposal methods like animal feed, anaerobic digestion, and composting. Improve coordination across federal programs so grants, technical assistance, and data all support a unified national waste agenda. Now, on paper, this is exactly the kind of backbone legislation that cities, states, and nonprofits have been asking for. The national strategy lays out big goals, prevents food loss, prevents food waste, increases recycling of organics, and supports policies that make all of that happen. But strategy documents don't fund infrastructure. Congress does. Without strong authorizing and funding bills, local efforts are forced to patch together grants and philanthropy. So right now, S. 835 is introduced and the text is public, but there's no sign it has cleared both chambers. And that leaves a gap between federal ambition and on-the-ground reality, especially as states race ahead of their own organic waste bans, date label reforms, and funding bills. Why is this bad rather than ugly? The bill itself is not harmful. In fact, it could reinforce the work you see in places like Maine and Colorado, which are already passing organic waste bans and standardized date labels. The problem is inertia. With every month of inaction, that means more food heading to landfills, more methane being produced, and more missed opportunities for food donations, composting, and anaerobic digestion. If the bad is about good ideas stuck in neutral, then the ugly is when ambitious zero waste projects move forward, but justice and trust questions are left in the rearview mirror. And finally, the ugly. We go to Lakeville, Minnesota, where Dakota Waste Solutions is proposing a 32-acre zero-waste recycling and composting facility that promises to recycle more than 85% of incoming material and ultimately handle tens of thousands of tons of food, yard, and wood waste every year. Now, on paper, the numbers are big. The site, which is situated on former agricultural land, would provide multiple buildings, truck scales, parking, stormwater infrastructure, and large berms planted with native vegetation for screening. At full build-out, the facility's ultimate annual capacity includes roughly 72,000 tons of food waste, 13,500 tons of yard waste, 22,000 tons of wood waste, plus 10,000 tons of cardboard, metals, and plastics. The project narrative frames it as a zero-waste processing facility aiming to turn nearly everything into useful products and significantly ease the burden on local landfills. But here's a little bit of context. Minnesota's own data show around 62% of food that could have been eaten or donated still ends up in landfills, and organics constitute roughly 1/3 of what Minnesotans send to disposal. State agencies have highlighted the need for more organics collection and processing infrastructure to extend the life of local landfills and cut emissions. So where's the ugly in all of this? Well, it's in the tension between vision and implementation. The Planning Commission has already approved a rezoning request. The project moves to the City Council next for final approvals. Residents and local stakeholders often worry about traffic, odors, truck noise, and environmental justice implications when large waste facilities are sited, especially near homes and sensitive land use areas. The facility's branding as zero waste can feel out of step with community fears if there isn't deep, transparent engagement, clear environmental safeguards, and accountability around actual diversion performance. This story is a microcosm of a broader issue in the circular economy. Large, centralized facilities can be powerful diversion engines, but they also concentrate impacts. Without inclusive planning and strong oversight, zero-waste branding risks becoming another flavor of greenwashing to communities who have to live with the side effects. So, the ugly truth here isn't that large-scale organics and recycling facilities are bad per se. It's that building a just, circular economy requires more than capacity. It also requires trust, transparency, and shared decision-making with the community. Now, this week's stories show three sides of the same system. A regional composting hub in Virginia proves that shared infrastructure can turn food waste into climate solutions when regions coordinate. A promising federal food waste bill shows how national goals still depend on Congress actually moving from strategy to statute. And a bold zero waste facility proposal reminds us that diversion capacity without community trust can spark as much controversy as a landfill. Now, here are some action items that I want you to take away with this. If you're in a region without composting, use Richmond's model as a case study to push your county or city toward regional organic systems. Contact your federal representatives about the Reduce Food Loss and Waste Act of 2025. Make sure to ask where they stand and how they're supporting the national 50% reduction goal. And when big zero waste projects are proposed in your area, demand genuine community engagement, enforceable environmental protections, and transparent diversion metrics. Thank you so much for joining, and you'll see me next week. This is Stacey Savage, aka the Texas Trash Talker. Peace.